Welcome into this segment of Behind the Pen presented by MostValuablePodcast.com. If you want to listen to the full podcast, go to blogtalkradio.com/MostValuablePodcast. Also, we're on iTunes, so check us out there as well. Thank you all for listening as always, and enjoy the show.
This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
Welcome in, my friends, to another episode of Behind the Pen. My name is Mike Rankin, and I'll be your host for today's show. And honestly, I have a treat for all of you listening. Thank you all for listening as always. But today, alongside me, one of my best friends, one of the OGs of really the podcasting crew, Luke Hennessy. Thank you so much for jumping on the show.
Anytime, my pleasure.
You know, honestly, it's been something in the works for a while now. We haven't been doing podcasts regularly since really back in the day. Honestly, this is a reunion of some sort. It's our third show here on Most Valuable Podcasts, and I can't wait to get into all the stuff we have on tap. It's always a pleasure to have Luke on and talking sports with me. We got Bears, NFL playoffs, Bulls, White Sox, and a bunch of other randomness, so stick around if you're on blogtalkradio.com/MostValuablePodcast. Thank you very much. You can listen to our full-length podcast there. If you're on YouTube, thank you very much for listening. We're going to start off today with the Chicago Bears, but before that, got to plug the Patreon page, patreon.com/MostValuablePodcast. Become a Patreon. Submit whatever kind of income you have towards us, and we can entertain you more so than we already do. Otherwise, I mean, we're going to provide content, consistent content for you. We got the NFL draft coming up. It's going to be so much fun. Luke.
You get so much more professional every time I jump on with you.
It's crazy, right? And honestly, this is going on a year now. Happy 2017 to everybody. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you, sir. And we're making moves, guys. It's we just hit 4,300 subscribers on YouTube. Couldn't have done it without you.
Whoa.
And it's a lot of fun. We do it
Please
for
donate
you.
all your money to Mike Rankin.
Specifically Mike Rankin and Behind the Pen, because obviously, come on, what's better than Behind the Pen? Nothing much. But Luke, man, it's so good to have you because, you know, like I said, back in the day, we used to get together and talk sports, and it's just a pleasure of mine. So this is a Chicago-based podcast. We talk about Chicago sports a lot, and it sort of gets redundant, but I don't really care because it's our forte. And whenever I have a chance to have you on the show, I have to get your opinions on the sports that we love, and that's the Bears, Bulls, White Sox, Cubs, all the Chicago sports. We're going to start with the Bears because their season just ended, 3-13, tied for the worst finish in a 16-game season in the history of the Chicago Bears. Right, I think 13 losses was tied for the worst ever.
Yep.
And people are excited, like Ryan Pace and John Fox. So let me ask you this. Are you encouraged by the Chicago Bears? Let me ask you this, actually, before you answer that question. Do you feel better about the state of the Bears going into next year after this season as opposed to last year?
No, does anybody?
Ryan Pace does. And John Fox does.
Joke of a conference?
9 wins, Luke. It took 9 wins for NFC team to make the playoffs this year.
Yep.
And the Bears had the second easiest schedule in the league. And they just took a dump in front of that terrible surface that is Soldier Field this year. 3 wins. 3. And yeah, there's so much. 20 guys in injured reserve.
Did they finish 0-8 on the road?
They must have.
I think every win was at home.
They beat the Lions, they beat the Vikings, and they beat the Niners. Yeah. All at home.
That is so sad.
Go Bears! Yeah! That gives me hope for next year, especially with the third pick in the draft. We're gonna get to that conversation because I'm interested to hear your thoughts and where they want to go with it. But first, we got to address the end of the season, and you know there was a press conference with Ryan Pace and John Fox. Apparently, John Fox is cool with everything, right?
Nobody says nothing more than John Fox.
And that's the thing,
He's
too.
never said anything.
I'm glad you brought that up. It's ridiculous. It's like, John, Mr. Fox, like, what happened on that third down play where you decided to go for it and it got stuffed in the backfield? Well, you know, I got to look at the tape, and when we think about it, you know, that's really the set we've been doing all year. So, I mean, I really can't speak on it right now.
His responses literally reminds me of like a Twitter bot that is coded to have like generic responses that kind of make you think they're human, but they're really robots.
Right, and they just lead you on. They get you in the DMs, and it's like, well, I mean, I digress. But with John Fox, and like, was it really necessary for him to be next to Ryan Pace in this postseason or end of the season review? Because we don't hear from Pace really at all. And then John Fox, really every single week, and we know this, he's pretty much in charge of the operation that is the Bears. He's had a lot of influence on the construct of the roster, the way they decided to draft the last 2 seasons. This is a big one for Ryan Pace, by the way. We're going to get into draft talk in a minute, but Dowell Loggins is coming back. And obviously, hopefully,
It's upsetting.
Vic Fangio is back. I mean, he's the savior, the lifeblood of the Bears right now. He's the reason why the Bears are somewhat relevant and competitive in ball games. But it's just like, the state of the Bears, 3-13, so much regression. And for a lot of reasons, you would expect maybe John Fox be fired after this season. I don't know what your opinion is on John Fox, but at this point, you really can't do it.
Can this coaching staff handle another horrible disaster year where they win like 4 or 5 games next year?
I mean, could they put together a narrative saying that, we're seeing progress? Maybe. It depends on the way they draft and the way the draft picks emerge as either legitimate NFL players, because that's something the Bears were in such a hole, right? Like 2 years because of Emery and then the end of the Jerry Angelo years. They were so talent deficient that they relied so much in free agency and old guys, right? And especially on the defensive side. So I don't know.
You got to draft out of it, and they haven't been able to.
And that's the problem.
And they probably won't.
That's the problem. And just to go back on this conversation, you didn't like that Dowell Loggins is coming back? Why?
No, I mean, he just looks horrible and unprofessional. I know it's not his fault that he was dealing with, guys like Cam Meredith and as his number 1 receivers and Matt Barkley. But I think it was pretty clear that giving Dowell Loggins another year to win 5 games as an offensive coordinator, what's the point?
Well, Dowell Loggins comes in with no prior experience as a play caller. And you know how obvious...
he looked overmatched right away.
Oh, a lot. Oh, yeah. Especially the first 4 weeks of the season.
I mean, how many games did Jordan Howard get like 17 carries when he was averaging 6 yards?
Absolutely. Over 100 yards, he broke the rookie record, continuing the Chicago Bears tradition of, right after Forte. And it was a great thing, too. 1,300 yards rushing, and he pretty much was a non-factor in the first 3-4 weeks of the season. And he didn't get regular carries.
Nope.
He would put up those kinds of numbers with Matt Barkley throwing it 45 times a game, Brian Hoyer throwing it 40 times a game. And you talk about why guys like Brian Hoyer had success and Matt Barkley had success throughout the season stat-wise, was because they were always down, trying to come back from a deficit, and you had to throw the ball. At the same time, Dowell Loggins shied away from what is the strength of the Bears, even with a broken-down offensive line. That was Jordan Howard. But for John Fox to be okay with the current set, besides the training staff, because it looks like there's going to be a major overhaul in the training staff, 20 injured reserve players, that's a problem.
Yep.
So, back to Dowell Loggins, I don't know. And I talked about this before in a lot of podcasts. Is he capable of developing certain offensive skilled players, like especially the quarterback position? Because that's what, in my opinion, the biggest need for the Bears this year lies within. So,
the Bears are about to be in a QB black hole for I don't know how long, but for longer. It's been going on their whole franchise career. So
let's look
I don't
at
know if it's going to end again.
The Chicago Bears roster at the end of 2017, or at the beginning of 2017, end of 2016. So you had some skilled players out of the last draft, right? Nick Kwiatkowski, not so much a standout guy, but when he was able to get some playing time, he looked okay. He's probably an NFL backup right now. I think the strength, obviously, is that front seven. I think that's fair to say. Cody Whitehair looks fantastic. I think if they decide to move him back to guard and go with Grassoon next season, that would be a mistake, only because of how well Whitehair transitioned into the center position. Leonard Floyd dealt with concussion specifically near the end of the year. I thought he was going to be paralyzed when he ran into Akeem Hicks.
Yeah, that's just the worst kind of injuries for this kind of guy.
Right. So, I mean, you had some, especially, you look at the top three picks, well, the top two in particular, it's not too bad. It's not too bad. However, what are the positions of need in your mind for the Bears in this upcoming draft? Like, where do you really have to target to get better?
I wish they could draft a really reliable secondary player.
I agree with you.
It's been badly needed.
Yeah,
for a long time.
Adam Archuleta, Vereen, what's his name? I forget his name, but Shane Vereen's brother.
Brock Vereen.
Brock Vereen was back there for a while. I mean, they haven't had a legitimate safety. They're putting Deion Bush out there. Adrian Amos is just a guy. You know, there's nothing special about Adrian Amos. He hits hard.
Seems like they've had a black hole in safety cornerback region since Tillman's prime ended.
Yeah, and we talk about Bryce Callahan. He emerged undrafted free agent, though. He wasn't drafted. Crayvon LeBlanc, they like him a lot. They played him pretty much every single week since week 2. And he's an undrafted free agent signed from New England. So
I mean, the Bears literally were one takeaway away from setting a record for the lowest amount of takeaways in a 16-game season. They had 11 all year.
And that doesn't surprise me because since Mel Tucker took over, this defense has been putrid in that category, and that's something obviously
They're just not
Bears
drafting
need.
playmakers in the secondary.
Exactly. Playmakers. They need playmakers.
And they're not even forcing fumbles.
Right. And you know what? You look at what their position is in the draft. 3. That's pretty dang good if I do say so myself. And they have so much of need, including the quarterback position, that if you reach on a guy, say like whoever's available, well, because it's early. Obviously, it's January 5th as we record this podcast, and the draft isn't until April. But I'm looking forward to the combine. But you look at it now, I don't think it would be smart for the Bears to jump at a quarterback at 3
No,
and pass on
definitely
a guy like, Myles Garrett, possibly Myles Garrett, who is projected a top 3 pick, Jonathan Allen, playmaking defensive end. So there are names on the board that are game changers that could step in right away. The Bears need that, especially on defense.
Yeah. I mean, does it look like there's any franchise-changing quarterbacks in the draft this year?
Well, there's mixed opinions because people say guys like Trubisky, Watson, Kaiser have such a high upside. And I saw there was a guy from Wyoming or something that was on Matt Bowen's board that the Bears could take at 3, which I'm a little skeptical about. This is the first time I've heard of his name. It's like what I've been reading about. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend like I know, and I'm a professional draft scout. I rely on them to kind of feed me information. I gather my opinion from that. And people who I trust, right? You know what I mean? Like Mel Kiper, get out of here. I'm not going to listen to you. I'm sorry. So I can't do it. So it's like, but right now, there's so many positions in need, you got to take the best available who's going to be there on the board. Now, on the defensive side, you talked about it, and that's a great point. Biggest weakness right now in that defensive front is the secondary. They have no sort of playmakers, and what's going on with Kyle Fuller? Kyle Fuller had a knee scope in like the 3rd preseason game, and he was out for the year.
He's just shown the whole time that he's never going to be able to stay on the field.
Do you think they get rid of him? Do you think he competes for a starting position next year?
I mean, at this point, it's definitely not a good idea to turn away guys who already are familiar with the team.
True, but Kyle Fuller hasn't really provided much of anything, and I guess Fangio was kind of unhappy with him, to say the least, about his unwillingness to be prepared enough to play. I mean, you trust your body.
It seems like it's been like 5 or 6 straight seasons where the Bears have had to turn the guys off the street to fill in their safety positions, cornerback positions by like week 8.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. Any def is good def at this point.
And if you would, okay, let me ask you this question. If you had to say what position was the most of need, would you agree that it's quarterback right now?
Oh, yeah, 110%.
Yeah, it has to be because obviously quarterback-driven league. And
You're just going to get Tony Romo.
Oh, God.
He's going to finish out his career in like 4 or 5 more years. Draft a guy to get tutored under him.
Should Tony Romo start in the playoffs?
Oh, hell no.
No? Oh, okay. We're going to talk NFL playoffs, so that might get brought up again.
No, they would throw off the whole rhythm of their team, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, signing Tony Romo, I think, would just be a step backward. And if you're going to sign Tony Romo, might as well just keep Cutler because you're going to sign Romo, who's older, more injury prone, with... he's going to be owed more money.
Yeah, realistically, don't do it. But from the fan perspective, because I hate watching the Bears now. That part of me says go for it.
Well, that's another conversation. Like, this is the least interesting Chicago Bears team I think I've ever been a part of.
Yeah, like, I mean, I would still get pumped up for every game in the Trestman era. Like, I still didn't care.
Right, and
at least that disaster was kind of fun to watch.
In 2013, they were relevant, and they kept you in, like, to a point until they got blown out, or they lost that game against Green Bay. Then in 2014, 5-11, what a disaster. The whole Josh McCown deal, benching Cutler and all this other stuff.
But even the year before, this past year, there was at least a little hope.
In 2015, they were, you were okay with the transition, right?
They kind of played well in some games. Coaching staff looked competent. They won 5 or 6 games.
6-10. They were in a lot of them. You could argue that they were a playoff contender if some games went their way. I mean, they blew a few games. They had leads, especially against San Francisco. That one stands out. This is last year, but this year, so much bad.
I had a feeling Adam Gase leaving would kind of ruin things, but I mean, there's way more problems than just that. But
well, you look at it too. When Gase left, and John Fox, going back to John Fox, he's talking about Dowell Loggins taking over this offense. Well, no, nothing's going to be that different. We're going to hear changes here and there, but bro, it's going to be the same offense. No. What? No?
That's how it works.
It's not even close. I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Fox, but Dowell Loggins has his own schemes, and he's making poo quarterbacks like Matt Barkley throw 45 times a game. And even if you're down, whatever. And people are on the Matt Barkley train. I hope that crashed and burned, because obviously he showed in the last, especially 3 games of the season, that what he is what he is.
I think he did a good job in that he showed that he can probably be a backup somewhere.
Mm-hmm. And he's probably going to get an opportunity to be a backup next year with the Bears. Now let's talk about this quarterback position specifically and what they should do moving forward. What do you think they should do? Okay, I'm going to give you some options here.
I mean, I wish I knew the draftable quarterbacks better, because I really don't.
Yeah, no, that's okay. But I'm saying, like, you will find out, right? Because it's
going to be talked to death, yeah.
Yeah, it always does, and it always plays itself out. But I think we can agree that the Bears have to draft a quarterback at some point in the 7 rounds of this draft.
It'd be dumb not to.
Well, it would just wouldn't make any sense, and I think it's going to happen. Almost 100% positive. However, let me offer you some scenarios. Okay, do you draft a quarterback and commit to him? Maybe in the mid round you get someone like a Brad Kai or whatever. Mid round quarterback, you just commit to him, and he's your starter. Do you draft a quarterback, let him develop under or backup like Brian Hoyer or Connor Shaw, Matt Barkley, whoever ends up winning the quarterback position? And before that, would you sign Brian Hoyer?
No, what's the point? I can see, if they're going to draft a quarterback, I can see Barkley playing like 4 games.
Yeah.
And then just letting the rookie finish stuff out.
So you would let Barkley and Shaw compete for the starting job, and then...
Yeah, once you realize things are hopeless, you just throw the rookie out there.
Okay. No, I feel you.
Let him get acclimated a little bit.
You're done with Cutler, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, there's like, that seems like a closed door, right? Is there any talk of that? I feel like it's a closed door.
Well, nothing's happened yet. And I mean, obviously they need time to make this decision, but if you're so set on cutting Cutler, why is he not gone yet?
Well, how does the option work? Is it a year-by-year thing, or is it if you pick one year up, you got to pick the rest of them up?
No, it's year by year, and as soon as you cut him, because his guaranteed money's done, this will be his 4th year of the new deal. He's owed like $17 million, I believe, which
It'd
is
be stupid to use that money on Cutler.
Middle of the pack, sort of owed. He's probably like top 12, I think, paid quarterbacks with that contract.
That money could go towards something way
with
more
the state
useful.
And with the state of the Bears, if you get that $17 million, you can invest in free agency. And we've seen it. Ryan Pace has had some success in free agency. He's picked up McPhee, looks like a good player, and even though he was hurt, they re-signed Will Young, which was good. Akeem Hicks turned out to be really good. So he's been hitting on guys in free agency.
I mean, free agency can only do so much.
Right, and they landed Josh Sitton pretty much in their laps. But that's the thing. You can't rely on free, and they know that. So they're going to rely on the draft. But back to this quarterback conversation. So Cutler's done. Cutler's out of the question. We brought up Tony Romo. I don't think that's going to happen. Kirk Cousins is out there. He's probably going to be re-signed by the Redskins, because what else are they going to do?
Exactly.
So I bring you this question. I talked about this my last podcast. Jimmy Garoppolo of the Patriots. Let me offer you this scenario. The Bears could trade the 3rd overall pick plus a future 3rd or something like that for Jimmy Garoppolo straight up. Would you do it?
Oh, no, not for the 3rd pick.
No?
No.
Why?
That seems definitely like overpaying for Jimmy G. Just because he looks really good with the Patriots doesn't mean he's going to come to the Bears where it's hopeless and all of a sudden, be a savior.
Right. No.
There's no way he's that good.
Sure. And that's obviously...
I mean, Matt Castle looked pretty damn good with
and
the
everybody
Patriots.
talks about Matt Castle, the comparison, and people brought up Brock Osweiler. This opportunity screams Brock Osweiler. But when I look at Jimmy Garoppolo, and I watched his combine, and I read his...
Bears had their chance to get him.
His scout profile outside of the draft, and with several NFL seasons under his belt, he hasn't played. He's only played in 2 games, and he got hurt. He looked okay. He looked pretty good. His skill set screams NFL franchise quarterback, and that's remained to be seen, because obviously he hasn't had enough time to play. Obviously, the benefit of being under the best head coach and arguably the best quarterback in the history of the game helps you. But you're right. It's the Chicago Bears. Guys going to the Bears, you can't just assume that they're going to succeed, because, my God, we've seen it before.
They had their chance.
Chicago.
They should have known about him in the draft.
Well, sure, and they're stupid. They haven't drafted a quarterback since David Fales in like the 6th round or whatever it was. And he hasn't taken a snap. This makes no sense. They lost him to the Ravens, and they got him back because they needed depth. But, my God.
Thought he got some snaps last game of the year. No?
No. I don't think so. I mean, I turned it off, so I'm going to be honest. Like, if he did, why? You might as well just play him. Whatever. That's a stupid conversation. But no, overall, you look at the situation with the Bears. I think, now I might be going out on a limb here, and I might be a little ignorant in saying this. You trade the third pick. Obviously, and your biggest position of need is quarterback. Jimmy Garoppolo is your best prospect, and that's what he is, a quarterback prospect among all available today. Now, if you get a Jimmy G, it automatically accelerates the time frame to relevancy in the Chicago Bears organization, in my opinion, because I think he's got the skills to make them at least relevant with the talent around him next year.
Does he really make the Bears any better than Jay Cutler did?
Not immediately, but eventually. And Jay Cutler...
But Jay Cutler, even if Garoppolo becomes a little bit better than Cutler didn't even really make this Bears team close to being competitive.
And why? Why did he not?
He doesn't have the players around him, too.
And that goes to who?
Two, also Cutler's a horrible decision maker.
Yeah,
so I don't know. I don't know
no.
if Jimmy G's like that.
No. Right, that's the difference. Cutler and Jimmy G have different styles of play, and they don't have the same brain, right? But what they will have to deal with, say Garoppolo comes in, is management and ownership and the way they put together NFL football teams, which has been a joke and a half over the last 52 years, honestly.
Yeah, I don't think this would be a very healthy environment for Garoppolo to up his game and become that guy.
See, I'm talking about Jimmy G in 2 weeks, 2 podcasts in a row, but I feel like the best option for the Bears at quarterback would be him. And that's,
That's a cop-out, though. That's like them admitting they can't find a real solution to
he's
their
a real
problems.
solution. He's 25 years old.
But getting rid of their third pick?
Yes, take the third pick on Jimmy G. It's like you're getting Jimmy G third overall. And you need a quarterback. That's all I'm saying. But guys at the top of the draft are too valuable, most likely, to pass up on. So I'm about like at 20%, mainly because of the way the Bears operate, if that would ever happen. This is just all talk, and I just like to talk about it.
Exactly.
And just throw it out there. But in all likelihood, as we end this Bears conversation, I'm sure we rattled off a little bit. And this, by the way, this podcast is probably going to run a while because it's not often I get Luke in the studio with me, so bear with me to end this Bears conversation.
We'll edit stuff out to make us sound way cooler and smarter.
No, we won't. We have the Bears, and I think where they go in the draft this year is best player available. And I think whoever's on the board as a playmaker, either side of the ball, most likely defensive side, they're going to take them.
I'm just ready to be disappointed.
Ryan Pace has to do it. He's got to hit on these draft picks because some of them last year and the year before turned out to be kind of irrelevant. So, I mean, DeAndre Hall battled injury. I don't know what's going to happen to him at cornerback. Deion Bush. Ugh.
I feel like it's so hard for everyone in the Bears front office and stuff to like agree on one pick.
Well, most likely because John Fox has been all over the place and he's like got a stranglehold of the organization. So, and they were talking about reports of Ernie Accorsi and Bill Polian coming in, like outside consultants, like looking over the Bears franchise, their operations, and then possibly tearing it all down.
I feel like that was some weird leak or something.
Yeah, I know. And John, I don't know what you're talking about. So it's like that's what he does all the time. So yeah, we're gonna end it on that high positive note. John Fox, he's coming back. Dow Loggins, he's coming back. Hopefully, our boy Vic Fangio's coming back. Other than that, training staff, see you later because they're idiots. 3-13, worst Bears season in the history of all time.
Yep, nobody cares about them.
Go Bears! I wish I had the Mike Ditka soundbite when he was freezing his ass off when they retired his number against Dallas. That was hilarious. Anyway. Thank you guys for sticking around for this segment of Behind the Pen. If you want more Most Valuable Podcast content, click on the video up above because I don't know why you wouldn't want to keep listening to our voices every day. But again, guys, thank you all for listening. We really do appreciate you.